With the first two factions of my miniatures game Union Jack coming together nicely, the police and the punks are really starting to get there. I've got all but one sculpt received and ready to be painted for more game testing to make sure everything works with the miniatures. But the punks are lacking behind on the painting. I did a lot of the police in one batch because they were all wearing riot gear, so I need to catch up the punks. And this being October, what better one to do than one of the brawlers of the faction, Dave Rampage. Now, Dave comes in a kit with his bandmates because he is part of the punk band Warlock Piss, but his brother is part of another gang, the Fam, which are like the chavs of the setting. So he is a dual faction model, and he is the drummer of the band. So if I flip him over, you can see the drumsticks in his back pocket, just as a nod to that. But this being the first orc I'm painting for the setting, comes with some lore decisions. What colour are orcs in my world? Now, I wanted to do something a little bit more realistic, but as we all know, orcs is green, so I feel like I need to keep that. I like orcs as green, but Dave Rampage and his brother Skeng I've always imagined as kind of black guys, so I want to keep that in there, whereas Oleg, this other orc in the setting, is definitely a white guy, and so are Plug and Vorvan. So this in mind, I wanted to be able to differentiate a more realistic skin tones, but still keep them green, so the characters have a bit more depth to them. So Golden Olive is my Goblin Green go-to counts as. This I'm going to mix with some of the Games Workshop colours for a black or brown skin tone. Hopefully, this will give enough of a hint and maybe mix more in later as I go up the highlights to make something. Kind of obviously a black guy, but still an orc. And I'll do this with other skin tones when I'm doing the white ones as well, just so that they have an orcish undertone, but you can still see that they're different kind of races in there. Unfortunately, the top highlight for this fell victim to Games Workshop pot rot, and the top was all clogged up, and then it dried out the paint, and I didn't realise. So I'll be using a little bit of dark sand and mixing that in with the middle highlight in this set, hopefully creating something a bit similar to the top highlight. I think that slight yellowy pale colour will help push it towards that rather than white, which will just desaturate it. Now, this is going to be an interesting experiment, especially when I get to the white orcs and goblins, because I'm not sure how this will mix in. The brown, it's more likely that it will mix in, and I think you can see here at the start I based it with the brown and then I'm mixing green in, and it's starting to work because these tones are more similar to each other. When I get to the pinks of the Caucasian flesh later on in this project, maybe a while from now, it's going to be quite interesting to see how this mixes. But the browns do mix nicely with the green and you create this orky skin tone. Anthracite grey and white mixed together and slowly glazed up till you hit pure white is how I've painted a lot of whites in this project. Now, I'm not going to make you sit through and watch it again in case you've watched the other videos, but I will put in the top corner the first video where I did it so that you can see how I did that. I'll tag that in the top corner now. But you can see that this achieves a nice smooth, crisp white. And I've got better at it the more times I've done it. You end up with a nice bright white that has more realistic shadows than if you were to use like a wash over the top, because white is still reflecting light even in the recesses of your t-shirt. Screamer Pink and Bugman's Glow now, just to give a little bit of life to that mouth, a little bit of fleshy colour in there. So a little bit of Screamer Pink over all of it, including the teeth, and then highlights of Bugman's Glow on the tongue, and go back with a little bit of Screamer Pink just to try and give some definition down the middle of that tongue, and a little bit of shadow there. Now, Dark Sand is going to be the tooth colour, and the reason I put that on the gums with the Screamer Pink is so that any bits I miss near the edge of the lips look like gum rather than are green, and it would look like the face continued to the bottom of the teeth. Golden Olive and Blood Reaver Flesh now, which is the mid-tone for the skin tone. I'm going to mix those two with a bit of fluorescent pink and add more and more fluorescent pink to that mix, and glaze up a bright pink skin fade on this orc. He is part of the punk faction. I need to paint more colours. I've done a lot of black on these miniatures. I'm going to try and brighten them up from here on out, and this is the start of that. So this is going to be stipple glazed, until we reach a point where it's nearly a solid colour on the top and a textured smooth transition on the back and sides. This is a very satisfying process, although it does take a fair amount of time. Now all I've got to do is a quick little line up on him with some of that greeny brown colour, and then we will be done with his haircut. Fresh trim for this punk orc. I really like this. I wasn't expecting to do this. This was off the dome in the moment. I also gave him an eyebrow slit like in my original art for him, and I would also give him one gold front tooth, although it's such small scale. It is hard to see when you catch it at the right light later on when I've done the metallics. You can see it. Anthracite grey with a tiny amount of turquoise, because this turquoise is very pigmented, just to push that more blue than grey. Then slowly mixing in white is how I'm going to paint his denim jeans. I want to go for an acid wash kind of look on these, so I would stipple on, getting lighter and lighter and lighter with that white added in, and occasionally use a little bit of Darkenhof Nightshade to bring it back down in recesses, or glaze all over if I push too far in one go to smooth it out. Unfortunately, I lost the footage of the final bit of white going on, but I do think these denim jeans are one of the best things I've ever painted when you see them done. So in the next little section, catch a look at the white scratchy acid wash look, because they are going to be one of the best items of clothing that I've ever painted, and I'm definitely going to be doing this again on some of the punks. This is the best way to paint denim that I have figured out myself. Now here's a little look at the mid-step before I started pushing up with the whites in those lighter areas. Scratchy, stipply highlights I would do with them to achieve this kind of denim look. This is what I was going for. Acid wash skinny jeans with worn patches on the front and around the knees. So bear that in mind when you see later shots. Now, dark sea blue put on really roughly with a little bit of a slightly damp brush, just to make scuffy leather highlights over the boots, the wrist guards and the belt. This is all the leathers on here. And I wanted to keep them black, even though I'm trying to put more colour on. But black kind of Doc Martens are an iconic look, an iconic British look that I wanted to achieve on nearly all of the punks have these on. One of them does have some Converse adjacent shoes on, but this one has the standard boots of the punks. A little bit of Emperor's Children pink and some deep yellow from AK. These would be to represent the two different factions that he is a part of. Pink is the colour of the Fearless, the punk faction, and yellow is the colour of the Fam, the Chav faction. So I put one on each knuckle duster. So he has had these custom made to represent his allegiances here. His right hand being the pink one, but the left hand tying him to his family in the yellow faction. For a highlight, I would use ice yellow on the yellow one, just as an edge highlight on those knuckle dusters, and then mix that with a bit of Emperor's Children pink to catch up the pink one. Once I had done some crispy edge highlights to really pop out those knuckle dusters, it would be time to do some metallics on them. I want to make them look a little bit worn, like he has used them. All of these models are on the battlefield at the moment, aka the streets of Grotport. So he has definitely hit a few people with those knuckle dusters, so I need to do a bit of work on them. But first, Japanese uniform and then some dark sand are going to be the colours that I highlight his little drumsticks in up his back there. They are nice crisp details on the back, so they are very easy to edge highlight. I was quite adamant when we were sculpting this that these had to be quite clear, so they would be painter friendly. And as you can see, a little brush doing some edge highlights, building up lighter towards the top. Perfect little drumsticks. Two other members of his band have guitars on them, so I'm looking forward to painting them. Now back to the knuckle dusters. A little bit of dark silver from Pro Acryl would be the base for all metallics on this, apart from his golden tooth at the front. See if you can catch it glinting. And then a little bit of silver from Pro Acryl to highlight up from there, to make it look like the metal has been scuffed and then polished by use against people's faces. Once I have got to that stage, we are getting pretty done with Dave Rampage. He has been through a long glazing process. Check out those jeans while we're here. I didn't have a good shot earlier, but they are exactly what I wanted them to be. This is one of my favourite models I've painted so far for this project. I really like Dave Rampage. Now, a scuffed old dry brushing brush with splayed bristles and some blood for the blood god, just to give some really light hints of a blood splatter. Only a tiny amount on the brush, take most of it off, doing little light jabs so that the longest bristles and most splayed bristles catch the model to make this blood look truly random, rather than trying to paint it in a random pattern. I'd had enough of trying to paint a random pattern on those jeans, and this is a nice, really subtle way to put more realistic splatter on and not do too much. It's easy to get carried away with the blood effect and want to swamp your miniature in it because it's cool, but little and subtle effects really add to the realism rather than blood for the blood god, corn, blood everywhere. A little splash on his vest, and I'd also put a little bit on top of his thigh, just so if you're looking for it, you'd find it. A little bit of storytelling on this miniature, and then I would also do a little bit on his right toe of his boot, just as if he's kicked someone as well. Dave Rampage has cool protector rules. He can move towards friendly models when they are being attacked, and if he comes into base contact with the person who's attacking them, he can swing fists too. Anyone can catch these hands. Dave Rampage is ready for the battlefield. So thank you to my Patreons, and if you would like to support a small indie game in development, then please consider joining. The link is in the top corner now and also in the video description. There is going to be a lot of progress made on the models in the next couple of months because I'm hoping to release this game early next year. I've still got to get all the artwork done for the rulebook and cards to go with the models, but all will be available in both digital and physical. That's STLs and physical models as well. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe, especially if you've got this far, to keep up with this project. Do a little like, leave a little comment. Thank you very much. Peace.